Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and this is Gary the Snail. I've had a very interesting, very fun time analyzing the psyches and backstories of all the SpongeBob characters, but for some reason, people are incessantly demanding Gary, to which I finally know why. Normally when a SpongeBob character is this recurrent, but still not primary, I'll do what I did with Mrs. Puff, scan through every single episode in which the character is billed as major. But the thing about Gary is that it seems his oddest moments are offhand and brief. So my usual methodology for auditing a character won't work here. This is both good, because the Puff methodology is extremely time-consuming, but bad, because there are so many little bizarre moments that I feel like all complement one another and fit together to piece the perfect puzzle of what Gary is. We need to do what I did with Patrick instead, a generalized audit. Thus, I took to the dreaded community tab on YouTube and asked the people of the world where I should start Gary's vetting process. The answer? The dream episode. In the episode Sleepy Time, SpongeBob is intensely thrust out of his dream, and he astral projects into the dreams of others in Bikini Bottom. First, he infiltrates Gary's dream, where he discovers that Gary has an extremely vivid internal world akin to a mind palace, where he is an intellectual philosopher of sorts, surrounding himself with books to entertain and educate. He accuses SpongeBob of violating the sanctity of his dream before showing him around anyways. Gary reads some quotes about how, presumably, he has attempted to create an incredibly detailed dreamscape by trying to imagine the same library every night for his whole life. And then, of course, there's the obvious: Gary is in a tall robe and can talk. Before I use this as evidence, I must figure out if this whole astral projection mental possession episode was just more of SpongeBob's dreaming. Things are said and done in the dreams he visits that he couldn't have any knowledge of. SpongeBob is, in his own time, generally insane, as we've discussed before. Additionally, at the end of the episode, they wake him up, infuriated that he ruined their dreams. This points to the whole episode being likely to have happened somehow. So, then, this is Gary, a philosopher locked in an incapable body, commanding the consumption of, as I said in the intro, copious amounts of food. The official SpongeBob YouTube channel also confirmed that this is Gary's most important moment in the series. He is intriguing. SpongeBob's all like, "You're smart," and Gary claps back with a, "Did you think my shell was full of hot air? No, we thought it was full of that bouncing thickness curvature ass." Vivisecting the intricate mentality of this gastropod mollusk is going to be a fascinating endeavor because everything is implied with him. He begrudgingly exists within the physical realm, demanding his energy be conserved for the more mental tasks he takes on during sleep. In other episodes, though, he's just a happy or aggressive or annoying little snail. He behaves like a snail unless he doesn't need to, but he always rolls his eyes at SpongeBob's ridiculousness, and thankfully we no longer need to be confused because now we have confirmation that his intellectualism is not limited to the dream world due to the episode where he gets a vocal collar. This episode is a newer one, and it's odd. It feels off. The animation is too fast and slapsticky. There are too many sound effects and it feels like it's under new management, and yet they've tried to mimic that old style of dark comedy a little bit, a lazy, self-aware parody that I'm not sure whether I enjoy or detest. Despite what the credits claim, I don't know if the original creators had a whole lot to do with this season when it was being made. I'm not sure if they'd left at this point or what, but it feels off. Regardless, it is still technically canonical, so it applies here. Gary basically gets a meow translator, and the machine speaks what he is thinking. As usual, the same sophistication from his dream several seasons prior remains. However, this time, he claims he's often been dreaming about world domination. We see this similarly in Plankton, another limited creature. If I recall, Gary caused a snail revolt and uprising during that Pet Show episode, so these ideals have been in place for quite some time. The thing about Gary, though, is that he could achieve this, which brings me to my main point. The fact that his ideal self-image mimics that of the Illuminati dolphin who watches over the solar system and sponge out of water. In the second SpongeBob film, a very, very weird scene occurs in which the ousted Plankton and SpongeBob create a time machine to save Bikini Bottom from their lack of Krabby Patties. After some chaotic space-time warping, they glitch out of their existential plane and enter what I purport to be a fourth-dimensional space station containing aliens we perceive as the Illuminati who dedicate their lives to the prevention of a global catastrophe which, for some reason, is implied to be ever-presently imminent. I say this because of the tetrahedron, the Eye of Providence, and the 3D stop-motion implying a change in fundamental perspective, as well as the literal fact of requiring a no-clipping time machine to access it, and during the epic rap battle segment it is claimed to be the home of the space-time travelers. They meet the currently employed Watcher, who happens to be a dolphin named Bubbles, an agent of this savior alien race. I'm not sure if they merely see him as a dolphin or not, but his constant chirping tics are in favor of him being some sort of dolphin, or rather, the dolphin species is based off of these aliens. It is a reference to the real-life known intelligence of dolphins, but in this world, the implication would be that dolphins are based off of these things, given Bubbles' far older age. Anyways, Bubbles claims to be the one preventing earthly catastrophe, as well as what he is currently doing, preventing a collision between Jupiter and Saturn. Question: is this even real? There's a dolphin shape in this nebula. Could it be a simulation? The physics of it are all off, and these planets have no reason to collide like this, unless the physics are just a joke and the collision is being caused by some ulterior malevolent force. Bubbles takes a bathroom break and for some reason doesn't tell SpongeBob and Plankton what to do to prevent the planets from colliding. He must have expected them. It's like he knew it was his job to help save the treasured Bikini Bottom, as he later raps. Anyhow, when he returns, they clash a little, and the protagonists escape back into the time flow. Later, Bubbles returns with no animosity, and he has been fired but enjoys it, and has come to grant the Bikini Bottomites a wish, using what I presume to be magic, aka brainwaves attuned to electromagnetism. He enables them to exist as air-breathing characters in the third dimension, as opposed to the otherwise realistic and dried-out animals they've been in episodes of the main show. This allows them to retrieve the Krabby Patty formula from Antonio Banderas, who found a prophecy and stole it. Another time. Point is, Bikini Bottom is at bare minimum a 2.5-dimensional flatland that is just as mystical to the surface world as we are to it. I'm not exaggerating. Need I remind you that this is the film which blatantly threw an acid trip to Jupiter in the middle of it? These explanations are needed. All of this is important because it is the single most relevant detail to something crucial, being that Gary is, or has read about or idolized, this omniscient society. British accent, shared. Marine intellectualism, shared. High collar cloak, check. The details are fuzzy, but this whole scenario overall is going for the same philosophically surrealist feel, and it succeeds. This rendition of Gary and Bubbles the Bottlenose are going for the same mood, and I believe they are the only ones who share these traits aside from the Cephalopod Lodge, which upon inspection is not related to these in the same way, lest they worship the symbols alone. We see in the episode A Pal for Gary what basically equates to a Lovecraft abomination, and Gary takes out the trash. In another important episode, it's revealed that Gary is the descendant of royalty, but again, this is just the vessel he was granted. With all that said, and with what is known about Gary's newfound world domination intentions, I can knock out two birds with one stone and ask, is it possible that Gary is the villain causing these planets to collide? No, it can't be. That's an enormous leap. I mean, as you know, normally I thrive off of details that can be used to piece things together. My natural form is analysis, not brainstorming, so I need to convert this whole situation. While there still exists little evidence beyond what I have described, and therefore very also little to disprove it, I encourage you to comment more because here's my theory. Gary had knowledge of, or some sort of connection to, the race of interdimensional sea creatures that Bubble is a part of. Perhaps he was of a competing race, or perhaps he was one of their own. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he left or was ejected for malpractice. Perhaps he allowed planets to collide. Perhaps he allowed Bikini Atoll to be converted into a 2.5D radiation-filled void. I'm not sure, but he left, and there may remain some form of animosity. In being ejected from such a situation, he lands in the second dimension of Bikini Bottom, which makes sense given it being shown to have a direct connection to the observation tetrahedron when Plankton and SpongeBob glitch out into it, and also given its similarly sapient marine creatures. Reborn to royalty, whether it is relevant or not I cannot be sure, but he still sees himself as a bootleg member of this race, of the marine hyperspace beings, and this limited form has changed him. He is becoming more snail-like as the series progresses, until all that remains is the clueless vengeance he desperately retains in his subconscious, fury at his limitations, despite the royalty he supposedly pushed himself into. Banished to a gastropod with an enormous world inside of his shell, something physically impossible in our dimension, Gary is the evil force that wants to collide the solar system. He is a nihilist, and we see it. Gary is very changeable. He often loves SpongeBob, other times he doesn't care. He's all over the place because he knows this is all temporary. His diagnosis: he's not a psychopath. He plays with everyone and allows his abilities to be used by metal detectors like crabs because he is bored. He's a nihilist disgruntled with the form he is bound to. Again, the biggest evidence is his pocket dimension shell, no matter the situation. He violates physics and second and third dimensional logic in a way no other SpongeBob character really does. His food levels truly do sustain a mind that doesn't belong there. I'm happy because so much can fall under this and be explained, something usually only applicable to the disgusting hypotheses known as dream theories. In his mental library, he tells SpongeBob the story of a man who dreamt that he ate his shoe, and then woke up and realized he did it in real life too. This would parallel how Gary's rich inner world can interfere with the space around him, could have caused a planetary collision during his furious confusion as Snail King in the film. This overall is the best explanation for the sheer fact that Gary demonstrates odd abilities throughout the show. This is outlandish on the surface given the initial situation, but the only logical way to deal with all of the weird things he does. Remnant of his old omnipotence, because really Gary does a lot of unexplainable things, and the most important moment he's ever had in the show compares him to Bubbles. This is direct. He is a lord of space-time, an impossibly large mind and pocket universe shell. He roars and breaks the laws of being a snail, eldritch horror. I do wonder if the snail plasma that turns SpongeBob into a snail is the sort of thing that just further suppresses the Lovecraftian residue in that shell of his. But what gets me most of all is this new stop-motion SpongeBob film coming up, which just so happens to be all about Gary. Bubbles is stop-motion. Coincidence? We pretty much never see this elsewhere. The films have a selectively retroactive continuity. They're their own thing. There is an amazing amount of evidence for all of this craziness. I just need more instances